Hello, and we're live. You're most welcome to another tutorial. This tutorial we're going to treat cascading style sheet. Now, this tutorial is brought to you by Palm Tree, a freelancing company that aims at developing softwares to solve problems. So that's what we do. Okay. Now, what tool is cascading style sheet? CSS is a style sheet language used to describe the presentation of a document written in HTML or XML, including XML dialects such as SVG, MathML, or XHTML. Now, what this CSS does is that it describes how elements should be rendered on the screen. Alright, so when you have, let's say, a couple of tags, HTML tags with contents inside of them, alright, what this CSS does is that it describes how these tags should be rendered on the screen, on paper, in speech, or on other media. Alright. So in CSS we have several versions, alright. The first version was CSS1, but now it's obsolete. Now the second version, which was developed, was CSS 2.1, and now the latest version is CSS 3. So I recommend you to use CSS 3, which is the latest version. Okay, so let's have a look at the building blocks of CSS. The building blocks of CSS. Now there are so many building blocks, but let's first tackle the selector. So the selector is one of the building blocks of CSS. Now, what is a selector? What is a selector? Okay, so in CSS, selectors are used to target the HTML elements on our web pages that we want to style. So if you want to style a particular element on your web page, CSS helps you to target that particular tag or element. That is the selector module. That's what the selector module does. Alright, so selector, as I said earlier or early on, is amongst the building blocks of the cascading style sheet or CSS. Alright, now there are a wide variety of CSS selectors available, allowing for fine-grained precision when selecting elemental style. In this article, or in this tutorial, and its sub-tutorials, will run through the different types in great detail, seeing how they work. So in this tutorial we're going to talk about some aspects of the selector. Alright, there are so many varieties of CSS selectors available. Alright, but in this very tutorial we're going to talk about like a section. We'll run through like the different types in great details, and we'll see how all of them work. Alright, so now having known what a selector is, we know for sure that a CSS selector is the first part of a CSS rule. Now, it's a pattern of elements and other terms that tell the browser which HTML element should be selected to have the CSS property values inside the rule and applied to them. Alright, so the element, or the element or the elements which are selected by the selector are referred to as the subject of the selector. Alright, so keep that in mind. The element or the elements which are selected by the selector are referred to as the subject of the selector. So let's say if the h1 tag is selected, that is referred to as the subject of a selector. Okay. Now let's have a look at the selector list. The selector list. Now, if you have more than one thing which uses the same CSS, then the individual selectors can't be combined into a selector list, so that the rule is applied to all of the individual selectors. Alright. Now, for example, if I have the same CSS for an h1 and also a class of .special, I could write this as two separate rules. Alright, so let me demonstrate it here, although I know that here is not a good platform. We'll jump straight into the code very soon, but that is just to demonstrate what I'm trying to mean, alright, what I'm trying to say. I just want to demonstrate for you to understand it. Okay. So what I mean is that you can have, say, h1. Alright, you can select h1 as your target and add style to it. So you can say, let's the header tag, alright, let's the h1 tag have a color of, say, blue. So here is how to add a color to the selected HTML tag, which is the header tag. So when we run this, and when you go to your web page, you should see that the header tag, or the header tag with its contents, or the element, alright, has a color blue. Alright, when we run this in real time, text editor, we should see the contents in the h1 tag. We should see the color of the contents to be blue. Alright. Okay. Now, if you have in HTML, we have classes and IDs. So we have classes and IDs. All these are selectors. All these are used to target a particular element on the web page. And after targeting these elements, you can give other functionalities to those elements. You can set their color, you can set the background size, you can set their font size, you can set their padding, you can set their margin, their box shadow, and a whole lot. You can add lots and lots of properties to these. And so these two, I really love using them, the classes and the IDs. Honestly, and I really love using these two selectors. So we'll dive deeper into them, but I just would want to let you know that the class selector and the ID selector both are very useful when it comes to targeting a particular element on the web page and adding lots and lots of functionalities to them as well. All right. So we talk about types of selectors. Now, when we talk about the types, I think I've talked about this. Types of selectors, we have the class selector and the ID selector. As I talked about it earlier. You know, all these, the class. We have the class selector and the ID selector. Okay. So this group, the class and the ID, includes selectors that target an HTML element such as, let's say, the header tag. Alright. So you can create a class, let's say box, and whenever it is that you're creating a class, you must begin it with a dot sign. So let's say dot and your class name, your parenthesis, and your functionality. So you can add properties here and values. So say you want this class to target an HTML element and give it, let's say, a font size of, let's say, 5 rem. So what this code means is, okay, so the p tag with text content, he is a good God. All right, so we want to target this. We want to add, let's say, we want to increase the font size of this content. All right, this text, he is God. He's a good God. We want to increase the font size. When we talk about the font size, how it appears, how the text appears on the web page, how larger or smaller the text is on the web page. And so if you want to increase this font size, all right, you create a class. All right, and as we learned earlier, the class is used to target a particular tag or element on the web page, in order that we are able to add a functionality, all right, to that very tag on the web page. And so if you want to increase the font size of this text, you create a class box. And I said earlier that in creating a class, you must first of all bring the dot sign. All right, after that you add your class name. So dot, and my class name is box. You can choose any other name aside the box. So box or anything. So we want to increase the font size. So font size column 5 rem. It could be rem or pixels. All right, it could be rem, em, pc, or px. So let's use 5 pixels. All right. So when you want, okay, you let me clarify this. You know, this code, which is a CSS code, of course would have, let's say, would be located, yeah, let me use that, would be most often located in a separate file, different from the HTML file. All right, and so would have a separate file, let's say index.css, and we would normally have, oh, who are those disturbing me? All right, so would normally have these, this very syntax inside of the CSS file. All right, and so I haven't created a connection between your HTML file and your CSS file. That's where you're able to, or that's where this very code takes effect. All right, so if you want this CSS code to work or to have impact on the web page, you have to introduce the class here. So class equals, so class name, the class name here, box. So that's all. All right, that is all you're supposed to do. You don't worry if you don't understand it. Would go on to the platform and just do a couple of codes there for you to get the understanding properly. So this is just to make you understand. All right, just to let you understand how selectors work. All right, so you can select an HTML tag using either the class or the ID selector. All right, you can use the class selector or the ID selector, and also you can target the HTML tags directly without using a class or without using an ID. So if we wanted to target the paragraph tag directly, would end up doing something like this. So P, your parenthesis, and font size without 5 pixels. All right, so you can either do this or that. All right, and they'll have the same results on the web page for you. But most of the times, or when you target the HTML tag directly from the CSS file, you don't need to add this class here, because we did not use the class selector, but rather we targeted the HTML tag directly. We targeted it directly, so there is no need for you to introduce the class inside of the opening paragraph tag. There is no need for you to introduce it there. It is when you use the class selector as let me repeat this again, sorry guys. It's when you introduce a class, all right, when you target an HTML tag using a class selector, whenever it is that you do that, that's where you're supposed to, all right, introduce the class name here, and that is how to do it. Class equals the class name. Here it's what box, but when you're introducing it here, there is no need for you to bring the dot sign, because this file would then be located inside of a HTML file, and there is no need for you to do that. But when you are in the CSS file, all right, this is how you'd go about it. Okay, so that's probably how the selector works. So I'd like you to really dive deeper into it, do lots and lots of research on how the selector module works. Okay. Now we have tons of selectors, lots and lots of selectors. We have the let me create a new slide here. have the we have the attribute selector. We have the attribute selector, and this attribute selector selects attributes, selects CSS attributes. So for example, you can do something like this. Let's say on the web page, select the anchor tag, the A tag, with the attribute title. Alright, and just give it your properties. Just give it a property, or your properties. Just give it properties. Yeah, dude. So you can either say let the anchor tag with an attribute title have the font size of 2 rem, and you can also say you can introduce lots and lots of properties. All right, you're not limited to only one property. You can matches. You're gonna smash. All right, introduce lots and lots of properties. Okay, so you can say let it have a margin of 1 VW and 1 viewport width. Alright, so you can introduce lots and lots of properties. We have lots and lots of properties in CSS. Go and research. Although I'll throw more light into them, in the course of a tutorial, but I'd like you to research. Programming is all about researching. So you just need a little, let's say tidbits for you to get going. But after you've gotten these tidbits as to how these CSS stuff works, alright, the next thing for you to do is to be able to do research on your own and figure out how these stuff actually work. Alright, and after that, honestly, you'd definitely be at the brink of reaching your mastery. Alright, okay. So we also have, so this is an attribute selector with an example. Why is this messing up? Okay, so with an example of this. Alright, okay, I think we should open our editor and start running the codes for proper understanding. Okay, so now we have opened our text editor. I think this is pretty much okay as compared to the very first platform on which we were discussing the cascading style sheet. Alright, so we've already talked about a couple of selectors. We talked about the attribute selector, I think that wasn't the first selector we talked about, right? It wasn't. The first selector was what? We talked about the class and the ID selector. Yes. So we've talked about the class and the ID selectors. Alright. So 3. Now, so we know the attribute selector and we know how to use them. We know how to use the class and the ID selector. If you haven't understood it, just put a comment. Alright, just comment at the comment section below and just tell me what you don't understand, so that I can just reach you let's say through WhatsApp or any other platform, and actually make you understand it. So we've talked about the attribute selector, the class selector. We've talked about the have we talked about the pseudo classes, the pseudo elements? All right, so let's talk about the pseudo classes and pseudo elements. All right. So guys, when we talk about the pseudo classes and the pseudo elements, this group of selectors includes pseudo classes which style certain states of an element. Now, example of a pseudo class is that hover. All right, so that when you have an element on your web page and when you hover your mouse on it, there should be an event, something should happen. All right, so that's what the pseudo class hover does. We have tons of pseudo classes. All right, so again, go and research on these pseudo classes and how you'd be able to use them. But I just want to introduce to you the types of selectors and pseudo classes and pseudo elements are parts of these selectors. So let's say should we talk about another pseudo class? All right, so we have the let me give an example of a pseudo class. The pseudo class. For example, we have the hover. So say you want to target, let's say, the anchor tag. So the anchor tag hover. All right, and the action it should perform. So let's say I think I should do it here so that okay guys, you let's actually do the real coding. All right. So first of all, let's create a connection between our HTML file. This is our HTML file and our CSS file. I think our CSS file already has a bunch of codes inside of it. So what we're going to do is that we're going to comment all these codes here. All right, we're going to comment all of these codes and start to write another. Okay, so we're going to comment and write another CSS code for them. So that's basically what we're going to do. Okay, so let's create a connection between the HTML file and the CSS file. So we introduce a tag called the link tag, and the link tag has a property called rel that takes the style sheet as its value, and another property, another attribute. Sorry, not property. The link tag has attributes. I don't really know what's happening to me right now. It looks as if I'm really drowsy. I'm feeling drowsy. I haven't slept for a couple of days, so understand me, guys. So the link tag has the attribute rel, which takes in the value style sheet, and it has another attribute called the href, which takes in so this very attribute creates the link. All right, this leads you to the path where the HTML, where the CSS file is located. All right, mind you, we want to create a connection between our HTML file and the CSS file as well. So the href attributes helps in that regard. All right, so here both files are located inside of the same directory. Both the HTML file and the CSS file are located inside of the same folder or the same directory. And so what we do is // and we search for the file, the CSS file, which is try. So try.css. So boom, we've created a connection between the HTML file and the CSS file as well. So now let's have a look at whether it works or not. Alright, so it takes us straight to the CSS file. Alright, so now it works. So now whatever code you type here, it reflects on the web page. So let's create an example of what we let's create an example of the pseudo class. Yeah. So say you have an anchor tag. Alright. So the A tag is the anchor tag. Alright. The anchor tag is used to create links. Alright. So it links you, let's say the anchor tag, it lists the anchor tag, sorry. So the anchor tag, it links one page to the other. Alright. So it links a page. It links, let's say a particular, let's say the home page to another page called the about page. You can link as many as you want. Alright, so that's basically what the anchor tag does. But I think we've treated that in the HTML tutorial. So here, let's say we want to say home. Alright, so home. Okay, and we want this home. Alright. Okay. So now let's target this anchor tag. If you want to add properties to this anchor tag, alright, in CSS, you target it from the CSS file. So let's target it. So I told you guys earlier that if you want to target a particular tag, you have to, first of all, if you want to use a class to do that, you create a class. So we're going to create a class and target it, alright, using the class. Or we can also choose to target it directly by calling out the actual tag inside of our CSS file. So here we're going to use both. Alright, we're going to first of all use target the HTML tag directly by calling it out. Alright, so let's call it out. So A, mind you, we're not using a class, and so we're not going to begin with a dot. Alright, we're targeting it directly, so we're just going to introduce it here and add properties to it. Alright, so maybe you want your, let me take you to the web page. Alright, oh, this is messing up. Alright, okay, so this is a bit visible. Okay, so alright, so maybe you want this to have a background color. Alright, you want the home element here to have a background color. Alright, so first of all, you target it, and I've told you guys that there are several ways of doing that. We use the selectors, alright, to target these elements and add functionalities, alright, to them. Okay, so now we've selected the anchor tag. When you come here, we introduce the anchor tag. So that is what we want to add beauty to. So we've selected it. Now add whatever it is that you want to add. Add properties to it. So you want it to have a background color of, say, this. You want it to have a background color. Now let's go and have a look at how it appears. Okay, it looks pretty much not pleasant to the eyes though. It doesn't really look appealing to the eye. So let's change the background color. So you can choose to change the background color to any color you want. Alright. But what this Visual Studio Code does is that it provides you with lots and lots of plugins, and so it makes it very easy for you to code. Okay, so let's have a look at what happens here. I think it doesn't really look nice, but let's go on, and we just would want to make it work. So we've added a background color to it. Now the same tag, you want to say add padding to it. Now what this padding does is that it sets values to the thickness of the padding area. Alright, so it sets values to the thickness of the padding area. So that's what the padding does. So say you want your element to have a padding of, let's say, 2 rem. Alright. Okay, so let's have a look at what happens on the web page. Okay, so it creates space around the element. Alright. Okay. So that's basically what the padding does. Now, let's say we want to change the color of the element. So font, color, let's say white. So you can choose to write it like this way, or white like this, or that way. They will have the same results. Alright, so now we've changed the color of our text. I think now it looks pretty much nice. Alright, but the font size of the element is pretty small, so let's increase it. So here we want to give it a font size. We want to increase it to say 20 pixels. Alright, so let's have a look at what happens here. You see, now the size of the text has increased. So that's how we set the font size. Alright, honestly, I'd entreat you to pay cognizance to these syntax. Alright, how to set the background, how to add padding, how to set the color, the font size. There are so many properties, but it's left for you to go and research. So the font size, let's set. So what else should we add to this? Okay, you see, you can clearly see that there's this bar underneath the text. Alright, so we want to take it away. We want to take the underlying stuff away from the actual element. Alright, so this is how to do it. Text decoration, you set it to none. Alright, and it will take it away. So now we've taken away the underline, alright, which was initially underneath the text, and now it looks like this. So now we've pretty much added beauty to our anchor tag with the element home. Alright, okay, so that's how to target an anchor, and that's how to target an HTML tag from the HTML file. Alright, so let's introduce another tag. Okay, so now let's introduce the paragraph tag. Alright, so the paragraph tag with a couple of other stuff. Now let's add beauty to this paragraph tag. Let's have a look at how it appears on the web page first of all. So that is how it appears on the web page. Alright, so we can clearly see that the paragraph tag and the anchor tag are linked to each other. So let's add space to both of them. So if you want to add a break line to both of them, you introduce another tag called the BR tag. So let's have a look at what happens here. Absolutely nothing happens. Okay, now we can see that, you know, there are a couple of spaces, alright, between them, and it makes it looks a bit nicer. So if you want to say separate two elements which are linked to each other, you use the break line tag, the BR element, alright. Okay, or the line break element, whichever way you want to call it, dude. So now we want to add CSS features to the paragraph tag here. So first of all, what do we do? Now I'd like to hear from you. What do we do? Exactly, that's what you said. We target it from the CSS file. Alright, and there are so many ways of doing that. We use the selectors, the selectors module. You can use the the class or the ID selector, alright, to do that, to target a particular tag. You can also target them straight by calling their names inside of a CSS file. But here we'd want to employ the fast method. We would want to call them by their names, alright. So let's select the P tag and the parenthesis, the opening and the closing parenthesis, and we add beauty to the tag. So here, let's say we want the background color to be 454545. Oh, dude, the background to be 4545, and we want the color of the text inside of the paragraph tag to be white. Alright, and would want to have padding of, say, 2 rem. Okay, so here we're adding properties to the paragraph tag in our HTML file, and this should reflect on the web page. So let's have a look at what happens. Okay, so this is what happens. So we have created a paragraph element, alright, and inside of a paragraph we have these text, and it has a background color of 454545, which is a code, alright, and which is a color code, color code, and it has a pattern of the text. The text inside of the paragraph tag has a pattern of 2 rem, and we've set the color of the text to white. So that is the result of what we did inside of the CSS file. Alright. So that is how to select or target a particular tag from the HTML file using selectors. Alright. So with the same method, let's employ another method. Alright. So let's use the class, alright, selector, because we've seen here that we have the attribute selector, we have class and ID selectors, alright. Okay, so let's talk about the attribute selector first of all. Yeah, the attribute selector. So here, when you look closely, the anchor tag has an attribute href. Alright, so we want to select our tag using the attribute selector. So let's have a look at how that is done. We want to employ that, all right, to beautify our anchor tag. So let's have a look at how that is done. So the anchor tag has with the attribute href. Okay, so let's target the anchor tag using the attribute selector method. So here we target the anchor tag A with an attribute href. Now let's have a look at how to target the HTML tag and add functionalities to it. That is using the attribute selector method. So here we want to add, let's say, border radius of, let's say, 10 pixels to the anchor element. Now let's have a look at what happens. I think it will add borders to the corners of the element. Okay, yeah, so we can clearly see that it's added borders to the corners, the very corners of the element. So we can add lots. We can increase the pixel. We can make it 50 pixel, and have a look at how it appears here. Okay, so that's how to add. That's how to select and that's how to select an HTML tag from the HTML page and add, functionalities to it using the attribute selector method. All right, so that is how to do it. So the href attribute, and you add whatever functionality you want to add to it. So, okay, so now let's go back to our HTML page. Now we've treated attribute selector, so that is selecting, targeting an element using the attribute. Now, okay, so let's move on to the class. Let's move on to the class and ID selectors. All right. So if you want to target an HTML element from the CSS file using the class or ID method, all right, that is how you go about it. First of all, you have to define your class in the HTML page. So let's say you want to add a class called let's say background. Let's introduce another tag here, because these tags are becoming clumsy here. So let's introduce another tag. Let's introduce the list tag. All right, so say we want to add, or not even the list tag. Let's introduce pre-tag. Okay, and we want to target this very tag from the CSS file using the class or ID selector method. All right, so what we do is we define our class here, and watch closely how to define your class. So the class equals and these two symbols here. All right, okay, so you type in your class name. All right, it's very important that you introduce a class name, because classes can't just be on their own. They have to come with your names. So class name, say select. You can choose whichever class name you want, or right. Yeah, class names are not dependent on a specific like rule or something. You can just choose out of random. Okay, you can decide to just even use rice as your class name. All right, you can decide to use anything as your class name, but it should be meaningful. All right, it should be meaningful. Okay, so we'll select and your elements. Let's say country is a software company located in West Africa. Find that to be precise. Alright, so say we want to add CSS properties to this very element, with a class of select. Now so if you want to target this tag with a class select, you define the class in the CSS file. Watch closely how it's done. I told you guys earlier that when defining a class in the CSS file, you start with a dot and the class name. Now when we come to the HTML file, we can clearly see that the name of a class is called select. So that's what we're going to use here. So select, and now you're good to go in adding functionalities to your tag. So here we want the text to have a font size of what? Say 30 pixels. Alright, let's go and have a look at what happens there. Alright, so it's increased to the font size is increased to what? 30 pixels. Now let's try as much as possible to reduce the font size to say 10, and then have a look at what happens there. The font size 10, and it shrinks it. Alright, it decreases the size. So that's how to target an HTML element using the class selector method. First of all, you have to define the class here. So define the class here. It should be closer to the tag, the opening tag, not the closing tag, not this one. It should be closer to the, it should be inside of the opening tag. Alright, but there should be a space between the tag and the class, and also the class should have a class name. Alright, so this is how you go about it. Alright, first of all, you have to define the class inside of the HTML file. Alright, and the class should be inside of the opening tag of it. Opening what tag? Yeah, the class should be inside of the opening tag, and there should be a space between the class and the tag as well. Alright, after that you go ahead to your CSS file and introduce the class name. Alright, the class name, introduce a class name inside of the CSS file, and we do that by first of all introducing a dot sign. Alright, after which the class name follows. Okay, so the dot sign here and your class name select. Okay, so now we've added a font size property which has a value of 10 pixels to our pre tag. Alright, to our pre tag or our pre element with the class name select, and the outputs as seen on the screen. Now we have this pre tag with a font size of 10, which shrinks the text, but I don't advise you to give your elements 10 pixels as your font size. Alright, no, don't do that. So here you can choose the 50 and it makes it larger. It increases the font size. Alright, and so you can choose to set your font size to any value you want. So that is how to select an HTML tag using the class method. Now let's have a look at how to do that using the ID method. Now note that a tag can have numerous I state it again, a class can have numerous classes. Alright, so a tag can have 2 classes, 3 classes, 4 classes. Alright, but an ID cannot have 2 or 3. Alright, and let's say you cannot add 2 or 3 IDs to a tag. Alright, you cannot add 2 or 3 IDs to a single tag. You cannot do that, but you can add 2 or more classes to a single tag. Alright, so here let's define another class. So you introduce another class called, let's say, me. There should be space between the first class select and the second class. So this is the second class. So let's go ahead and introduce the second class me inside of our CSS file. And we'll do that by introducing the dot sign and the class name me. Okay, so here we want our pre-tag to have a color red. Let's go ahead and see what happens there. Okay, now the color is set to red. So that is how to introduce another class inside of our tag. Alright, so I said earlier that an HTML tag can have lots and lots of classes. Alright, so a single tag can have lots of classes, but a single tag cannot have lots of IDs. Alright, okay, so we're going to use the same method, the method we employed using the class selector. We're going to employ that in treating the ID selector as well. So here we can change the class. Alright, okay, let's go ahead and just introduce another tag. So that's pan tag, and let's add the mangoes don't fall from the sky. Where do we go when we fall asleep? Dude, what the hell is that? Okay, so we've introduced another tag called this pan tag, and we've given it a value or some values here, some texts. Okay, yeah, and let's go ahead and add our ID. So that is how to add ID. Right, so here we can introduce the ID name, say span1. Mind you, I told you guys that these names you can decide to choose any name at all, but with a class you can introduce lots of classes. Alright, you can introduce lots of classes inside of the let's say an HTML tag. Alright, so let's say when we have a look at the pre-tag, okay, we have 2 classes here, the select class and the me class. But with the ID, you can only have one ID name, unlike the class where we have two classes. Alright, we have the select class here and the me class here, and when we go to our CSS page, we have the select class here and the me class. Alright, so the ID can only be one. Alright, so we have the span tag with ID span1. So let's go ahead and introduce that in our CSS file. So span1. Good. Okay, so we introduce, let me clarify this. We introduce ID inside of our CSS file by, alright, first of all, type in the hash what? The hash sign. Alright. So first of all, we have to introduce the hash sign. We have to introduce the hash sign. Alright. After which the ID name follows. Okay. So that is how to introduce ID inside of your CSS file. So when we traverse the HTML file page, we can clearly see that we have the span tag with the ID name span1, and we want to add functionalities to this very tag. So let's go ahead and do that in our CSS file. So we want the background. We want the background to have, let's say, we want the background color to be yellow. Alright, let's go ahead and see what happens to it on the web page. Okay, so we can clearly see that. We can clearly see the background color here becomes yellow. Alright, so let's add padding to it. Let's give space to our element. So padding of 1.5 rem. Okay. Alright, so this looks a bit nicer. So that is how to select a tag from the CSS file using the ID selector. So now I think we've treated the types of selectors. We're done with the attribute selector, the class and ID selector. Now let's go ahead and treat the pseudo classes and the pseudo elements. So an example of a pseudo class is hover, the column hover. Alright, so we have tons of pseudo classes and pseudo elements. Alright, so it's up to you to go out there, to go online and research. But the first pseudo element I will introduce to you, which is most definitely common when it comes to front end development, alright, is pretty much common. So let's go ahead and introduce that. Okay, so we want this element, the home, alright, this whole element. When we hover the mouse on this element, we want the color, the background color, and the color of the text, we want them to change to a different color. Alright, So that is what we do. We do that by using the pseudo classes or the pseudo elements, and to be able to achieve that which I just described, we use the hover pseudo class. All right. Okay. So first of all, we have to target the element. Now we want to add the pseudo class to this tag. All right, the anchor tag. All right, so that's what we're going to do here. So first of all, the anchor tag A, and we introduce the pseudo class hover. So the hover is introduced by typing colon and the hover name. All right, so that is how we do it. So the anchor tag followed by the colon and the hover name. So that's how to introduce a pseudo class. So that is how to target a particular tag and give it a pseudo class. All right. Okay, so here we want, when we hover around our anchor tag, which is A, we want the background color. What is happening? We want the background color to change to yellow green. Now let me change this color. Okay, we want the background color to change to, say, okay, this color, and we want the color of the text as well change to white. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what happens when we hover on the element. Okay, so you see how beautiful it looks? So that is how to do that. So that is how to select or to target an HTML tag and add a pseudo class to it. So the hover. So when you hover over it, it turns the background to green and it turns the text color to white. Okay. Now let's go ahead and change, because it looks as if when we don't hover, the color text is white, and when we hover the cursor on the element as well, the text color is the same. All right, it's the same white color, and so let's change it to another color. So let's change the white to, say, black. So black. And let's go ahead and figure out what happens when we hover over it. Alright, so it turns the color to black. So you can choose to add so many. You can choose to add so many properties here. Here, let's have a look at another property. You can choose to add a. You can choose to add a. Don't forget, in CSS, when introducing your properties and adding the values to them, don't forget to end with a semicolon. Other than that, you might end up running into so many errors. So you have to end your values with a semicolon. Alright. So let's give it a box shadow of, okay, let's give it a box shadow of, say, red. This is going to look very gross, honestly. So when we hover, the box shadow should be red. It doesn't take effect. What's happening? Okay, let's go ahead and do something special here. Okay, and red. So let's have a look at what happens when we hover over our element. Okay, alright, so it sets the, here when you hover, it sets the box element to red. So that is how to do that. When you want to give, let's say, when you want to box size your element, alright, or when you want to add a box sizing effect to your elements, that is how to do it. Alright. So I think we're done with the selectors. Now, I said earlier that a selector is a part of the building blocks of CSS. Alright. Okay, and we've done 1 hour 11 minutes, a couple of seconds. Okay. So let's go ahead and treat the next building block of CSS. So guys, let's have a look at our second building block of CSS. So we're going to treat background and borders. I think I've already talked about this a little, but let's go ahead. This is the second building block of CSS. How to give backgrounds to your elements, your HTML elements, and or how to give borders to your elements on your page. Alright. So when we visit the code here, okay, let me go to the web page. Alright, so this element, when we hover, alright, you see that there is a box size. Alright, when we hover, we see a box size of a box size with a red color. Alright, with background color green. So we've already set the background, and so I think we're through with this very one. And when we have a look at this element as well, this very elements, the paragraph tag, also has a background color, and we added padding, a property called padding, just to spacing up the text. Okay, so we added the padding just to give space to the or just to space up the text. Okay. So now, so we do that, we set the background by introducing the background value and adding the color you want. It could be background color, it could be background image. So you can just decide to just add background image to your tag. You can choose that. Background, so we have so many properties for background. We have background attachment, we have background color, background itself, background image, and the position of the background as well, and whether the background should repeat itself or not. And we have the background size, we have the background clip, we have the backface visibility, the background origin, we have the background attachment, we have the background position. And so we have lots and lots of properties with regard to the background property. Alright, or we have lots of properties that are associated with the background property itself. Alright, so that is how to set a background or an element's background. Okay, and let me show you how to add a border, how to add border to your HTML element or tag. Okay, alright, so let's have a look at this. Let me decrease this element's font size. So guys, how do you do that? How do you do that? What? I cannot hear you. Oh, sorry. I have forgotten I'm alone here. Alright, what says the time? I think it's 12:19 a.m. Dude, I'm supposed to be asleep by now. I'm extremely tired. Okay, so we want first of all, yeah, I'd like to decrease the font size of this very element, since it looks very weird to me. So how do we, the palm tree, okay, the pre tag with a class select, okay, and me as well. All right, so the pre tag, where is the pre tag? Okay, so we can do that using the pre tag, okay, we didn't introduce the tag directly, but rather we used their classes. Okay, so let's have a look at the class select. Okay, and we gave it a font size of 50, so let's decrease it to say 30 and have a look at what happens. Still, it looks, I don't like how it looks, so let's go further and increase decrease it to 20. Alright, so I like it this way. So we want to add, mind you that we're treating the second building block of CSS, which is background and borders, and I've already treated the background with you guys, so let's go ahead and treat borders. So if you want to add border to your element, you go ahead and introduce the border and column, and you want your border to have, let's say, 2 pixels, and solid, and you want to set your color to say yellow. All right, so that is how you go about setting your border, your element's border. You first of all define the property and the values. You want it to have a let's say a stroke of 2 pixel. All right, stroke of 2 pixel, or you want its thickness to be 2 pixels. Okay, and you want it to be solid as well, and you want the color to be yellow. You can choose any other color. All right, okay, so let's go ahead and figure out or find out what happens. Okay, it gives a border of 2 pixels. Okay, yeah, but here it looks very weird. When we move forward by working on real projects, we'd see how to make this very nice, how to make this very element nice, or how to make the text look a bit nicer inside of the border itself. All right. So don't forget your semicolon. So that is how to add border to your element. Okay. So let's go ahead and change this to another color. Let's make it noticeable. Okay. Here we're able to notice it. But our stuff, our elements are clinched to each other, and we separate them by introducing the line break. The line break what tag. So let's have a look at what happens. Okay. Okay. So now that is how to set your border. Alright. So let's have a look at the third building block of CS. So the third building block, of course, is overflow. This overflow property, gives an element the scrolling effect. So let's go ahead and look at an example. So now let's go ahead and look at an example. All right. So when we critically look at this very image, this element, sorry guys, I'm tired, forgive me, this element, we can clearly see that underneath the background color there is another element here. All right, and there is one at the horizontal section and the vertical section, and so it gives you the overflow property gives your element a scrolling effect, and you can choose to give only the horizontal section of your element that scrolling effect. You can as well choose to give the vertical section of your element the scrolling effect. So let's go ahead and look at how it's done. So here we want to give a scrolling effect to our paragraph tag. Now when we come to our HTML page, here is the paragraph tag with these texts inside of it. Alright, so we target it and we give it a property of, okay, so that is how you do it. First of all, you introduce the property, so overflow. Alright, and when you check, so overflow scroll. So when we visit our web page, we can clearly see the overflow effect, both horizontal and vertical. You can choose to set only the vertical, and you can, as well as the horizontal. So you can choose to set only the vertical. You can choose to do overflow Y, dash Y. All right. So overflow Y, which sets the vertical section of the element. So it sets only the vertical. Here, overflow Y sets only the vertical. Alright, so when you want to set only the horizontal, you do overflow X, and it will set only the horizontal. Alright. Okay, and what this overflow does is that it specifies the handling of overflow in the horizontal direction. Alright, and so it does not allow texts to move out of their boxes, but rather it limits them, it puts them in a confined state. Alright, okay, so let's go ahead and have a look at the next. Let's go ahead and have a look at the next building block of CSS. So the last building block of CSS I'm going to treat in this tutorial is the image building block. Alright, adding images to your tags using CSS. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to target a particular tag. So let's target, which tag should we target? So let's target the elements with a yellow background color and give it a background image. So we'll target a span tag with an ID of span 1 and give it a background image, any image at all. Alright, so let's go to our CSS file. I'm extremely tired. Wow. Okay, so where is the tag? This, okay, the ID. So let's give this background image. Okay, so here let's give it a background image. Since since all the files are located inside of the same directory, you introduce your dots and your slash and you just add your image. So if all the files are located inside of one folder, that is how you go about it. Right. You can pretty much go and search, do searches on how to work around, you know, these kind of stuff. So let's find a preferred image. Can I have a look at this? What is that? Okay, this background looks oh my days, what is that? Let me change the background color. It doesn't look appealing at all. Okay, so I think I do not have a lot of pictures here. What is this? Okay, let's find out what this is. Okay, I think this, and let's change the text. Let's give it a color of, let's give it a color white. Okay. Alright, so let's have a look at what happens on the web page. Okay, so I think we've set the background image of this very element. So that is how to set background image of an element. Alright, so first of all, you introduce the background image property and you set the URL where it is located. In this case, it's located inside of the same directory as the HTML file and the CSS. Alright, and the name of the image here is temp dot, and the name is temp and the extension is png. Alright, so the name temp with an extension png. Alright, so that is how to set background image of a particular tag. So let's have a look at the last building block of CSS. And I'm not talking about like the last building block I'm going to treat with you guys. The rest are for you to go and research on and apply them as well. So we're going to treat the flex box. So the flex box. Now, why flexbox? Why flexbox? Or what is flexbox per se? Flexbox is a one-dimensional layout method for laying out items in rows or columns. So, flexbox is one-dimensional layout method for laying out items in rows or columns. Now, items flex to fill additional space and shrink to fit into smaller spaces. So get that in mind. Alright. Well, when you have so many items, they flex to fill additional spaces and shrink to fit into smaller spaces as well. All right. So why Flexbox? Now, for a long time, the only reliable cross-browser compatible tools available for creating CSS layouts were, thinking like floats and positioning. These are fine and they work, but honestly, in some ways, they are not, or they are also rather limiting and frustrating. Okay, so these developers, those who introduced HTML and CSS, the one the I don't really know how to put this, but these coders came together and they put measures together and they introduced another building block. All right, they introduced another building block. They introduced another CSS building block called the Flexbox, which makes positioning and floating still very easy. It makes how you lay out it makes your layout method very very easy. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and look at how this works. So first of all, okay, let's define an element here let's define an element. Let's define a div element. Okay. So let's define a div element with, let's say, the header tag. Okay. So the header tag. Welcome, folks, to my very first tutorial. Okay, so we've defined a div tag and we've given it a header tag. So the header tag is a child to its parents, which is the div. So we define the header tag, and let's define another. Let's define a link tag, an anchor tag, and register. All right, and let's define another tag, the paragraph tag. And give it some text in it. So in this tutorial, we're going to talk about cascading style sheet. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a look at how this Flexbox works. First of all, we've defined a div tag and given it h1 tag, and we've introduced another tag, the anchor tag, and we've introduced a fat tag inside of a div tag. Alright, so the div here serves as, say, a container, alright, that contains these children. So now the div tag here is a parent to all of these tags. Alright, so let's have a look at how this flexbox stuff works. So let's give a class to this div tag. We want our CSS file to be able to target this div tag. Alright, so let's introduce a class here. So class welcome. You can decide to use any name at all. So class welcome. And let's set it here. So we introduce the class by first of all introducing the dot sign and the class name. So welcome, or open and closing parentheses. Alright, so here if we want to employ the flexbox layout method, first of all we call the flex, we call the display property, and we'll give it a value of flex. So that is the first thing you have to do. Alright, now let's have a look at what happens on the web page. So it looks a bit messed up though. So first of all, we introduced, mind you that here we use the p tag, and the p tag, let me have a look at it. No, this is the anchor tag, right? Okay, and the anchor tag, okay, so we introduced the a tag here. Alright, and we have already added CSS codes to this very anchor tag, which is why it takes effect when we introduce another anchor tag. Alright, the same effect which was introduced when we defined the very first anchor tag will occur. That same very effect will occur here. Okay, let's go ahead and change the anchor tag to a different tag. So say the block code, okay, and give it some values, some texts, Alright, so inside of our div tag with a class of welcome as a set value, we have three elements, three tags here. We have the h1 tag, we have the block code tag, and we have the paragraph tag as well. Okay, so let's have a look at what happens. Okay, so this is what happens. So that is the first tag, the header tag, and this is block code tag, and this is the paragraph tag which was introduced. Just look at how they are sectioned. Alright, this is positioned at the far left. So the header tag is sectioned at the far left side, whereas the block codes on the middle and the paragraph at the far right side. Okay, so the flexbox, it helps you to be able to position your elements in a manner where it would be very pleasing to the eyes of viewers. Alright, okay, so that is what the flexbox does, and we introduce the flexbox by first type in display flex. So the first code display flex when you type this display flags, that is what it should happen. All right. Now, the display flags has some more properties attached to it. So let's have a look at the next property. So we have the flex direction. Now, by default, our flex direction is set to row, but you can change it to column. And let's have a look at what happens on the web page. All right. So it sets it to no, not this. All right. So by default, our flex direction is set to column, and when we change it to row, that is how the layout looks like. All right. All the elements are set. All right. In column. All right. But when we change it back to row, that is what happens. That is set to the far left, that is set to the middle, and that is set to the far right. Okay. So that's pretty much what happens. So we have flex. You can set flex value. There's so many properties associated with the flex box. We have the flex grow property. We have the flex wrap property. You can set it to now wrap. You can set it to wrap. You can set it to wrap, reverse, initial, inherit, unset. So you can set it to any way you want. All right. So you can set it to any value you want. All right. So that's pretty much what the flex. So that's pretty much what the flex property. So that was pretty much how to set your flex box, how to section your web page in such a way that dude, I'm tired. I don't really know what to say. So that is how to add the flex box functionality to your page. All right, so guys, I think we would dive into an actual project. Let's dive into an actual project so that you understand pretty much what has been done so far, what has been achieved so far. And I have already done the project. I did a project this very afternoon, and so by the end of the project, that is how our page will look. We're going to create our slide, our left slide. So this whole element here, so left slide, and all the elements found in this section, all the elements found here in this section okay, no, let me put it this way. The whole page has been divided into two, all right, using the flex box layout system, all right, or layout method. I feel like taking a nap. or sleeping. Okay. So the entire page is sectioned into two. All right, we have the left slide, which is all this area, and we have the main, which is all the contents here. All right. So let's go ahead. First of all, we're going to have our class. We're going to set first of all we're going to set sorry so first of all we're going to set a container, which is the entire web page. All right, and we're going to define, we're going to create our left slide or our left slider. So left slide, and define the main slide as well. The main, all right, not the main slide. Okay, so now at the left slide section, we're going to have our header tag with text contents inside of it. So here we're going to have hi. We're going to have hi, welcome to my page. All right, and again we're going to introduce a paragraph tag here and introduce what we do, but I wouldn't really want to type exactly what we do, so I'll introduce some random texts here. So all right, so we're creating a portfolio website. All right, so hi, welcome to my page. But prior to that, let's introduce an image tag here. All right. So image, where is the image? Let me get to the icons. Logo, okay. So logo, okay, so logo 2. All right, so we've set our image. Okay. After the image, I think we're done with the left slide. So let's have a look at how it appears on the web page. All right. Okay. So this, we have not applied any CSS to our HTML page. Neither have we linked, or have we created a link between the HTML page and the CSS page. All right. So we're done with the left slide. Let's go ahead and move to the main class. So here we're going to have a paragraph tag here with some random stuff. Okay. So after the paragraph tag, we're going to have our h1 tag with services. Okay, so after the header tag, we're going to introduce another class called the grid class. Alright, and inside of the grid class, we're going to introduce another class, grid content. Alright, so let's go ahead and so let's have a look at what happens here. Right, and documents, so we'll have the left slide here and the main there as well. Okay, that's pretty much it. Alright, okay, so let's continue. So we have a header free tag here. Let's say we do provide tutorials. So there's going to be one of the services we render, and let's introduce paragraph tag here and introduce some random text. You can just do that by typing LOREM and hitting enter. So we've introduced random text which describes, you know, what tutorials, what kind of tutorials we render. Okay. Okay. So let's include an anchor tag here. An anchor tag. So anchor tag and read more. Read more. Okay, let's go ahead and just have a look at what happens. Alright. Okay. So let's copy and paste. Let's copy and paste this whole div, this div container. Okay, so let's copy this and let's copy and paste it 3 times or 4 times. So 2, 3, 4. Alright, and let's go ahead and figure out or find out what happens on the web page. Okay, so we have services. One, we render tutorials. Let's change these values to something else. So we create softwares. We can create events. We provide consultation. Consultations. All right. So, okay. So this is raw HTML. This is raw HTML. All right. So now let's add CSS syntax to it to make it look appealing to the eye. All right. So let's go into our CSS, and first of all let's introduce the main container. So the div, so this is the main container. So this, inside of this container are all these elements. All right. Okay, so that the container class, all right, holds all of these elements. So all of these elements are found in the container class. So when we introduce a flex, a display flex property to this class, all right, it should divide these elements. All right, it should divide them into, say, 3 or 4 sections. Let's have a look at how it looks on the web page. No, we haven't introduced it here. So let's call out the class name, the container class, and give it a display flex. All right, so let's have a look at what happens on the web page. Nothing happens, because by default, the flex direction is set to what? By default, the flex direction is set to row. All right. Let's have a look at what happens when we change the flex direction to column. Still nothing happens. I think we have not created a link between our CSS file and our HTML file. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's create a link between our CSS file and HTML file. All right, so now we should have. Why is this not working? Okay, let's set it to so display flex, it will divide them into. Okay, yes. So now we have it working. So this is what the display flex does. All right, so it divides the section into 2. Now we have our left slide div as well as the main div. So it has divided these elements into sections, into 2 sections. So that's what the display flex does. All right, now let's add background color to our left slide class. All right, so let's introduce the left slide class, and we do that by introducing a dot sign and the name. So left slide. Let's add a background color of what? Gray. Let's choose gray and have a look at what happens. Okay. It looks it does not really look appealing though, but all right, so we've added a background color to our left slide class. Okay, so let's go ahead and add padding to the text. So let's add padding of 3 VW. Let's have a look at the text. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's go ahead and add the background color to our grid items. So we're adding background color to this, to our grid items here. And background color to our grid item, grid content class. Okay. So grid content background gray. Let's give it gray and have a look at what happens. All right. Okay. So not bad, not bad. All right. Okay, so let's make our page a bit responsive. So let's do that by introducing the media query. Is it the media query? The media only screen and okay. So let's set the maximum width to maximum width. Let's set it to 900 pixels. Okay. So this code here would make your web page responsive. It will make it mobile friendly, so that when you're using your mobile to access your web page, it will look nicer. All right. Okay, your page will look nicer. All right. So media only screen and max width set to 900 pixel. Now let's introduce the left slide. Okay. So here now let's introduce the container rather. So here the container, when the web page has a maximum width of 900 pixels, the container should reduce the display, yeah, or the flex direction rather. Okay, so the flex direction should be column. Okay, so when we reduce our page, okay, so now it's responding. All right, it's responsive. So when we shrink it to a width of 900 pixels, okay, so when it reaches 900 pixels, the layout should change, and the flex direction should also change to column. So that's how come we see our web page change when we reduce the width of it. All right. Control Shift. Sorry guys, I got interrupted. So let's go ahead and it's a flex direction column. That is when the maximum width is 900 pixels. All right, so having done that, let's we want to create an empty space between the slide section and the main section. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's create the great content. Let's create a left slide should. Okay, let's introduce another media query here. Okay, so let's introduce another media query. Media only screen, and the minimum width should be 901 pixels, so that when we decrease our page size, our web page, and it reaches 901 pixels, the following should occur. So this is for larger screens, whereas that is for smaller screens. All right. So we want to create a space between. We want to create a space between the left slide section and the main section. All right. Okay, so that is how we're going to do it. So media only screen, and alright, so we introduce this left slide and give it a margin left and see what happens. I've got no idea as to what's going to happen. So what is going on, dude? There an arrow somewhere? Okay, let me erase all these. All right. No, the arrow is coming from somewhere else. Let me wipe all these off and have a look at what happens. Still, there's an error. What's going on? Okay, dude. Shoot. All right. So now error corrected. So let's introduce. Okay. So now let's introduce the left slide class, and give it a margin left property with a value, say, let's give it, say, 1 rem, and have a look at what happens on the web page. Now, that is not what we want. Okay, so let's introduce the main rather, and give it that. Give it a margin right. Okay, Now look what happens. Still it doesn't work. Alright, so now how are we gonna do this? So we're going to let me have a look at let me check. Okay, so we want to divide we want to create a division between the left slide and the main class. Alright, so that slide, okay, margin, right, say 1 rem. Okay, all right, so we have created a division between the left slide class and the main class section. All right, these folks, my group members, why are you worrying me like that? Okay, so let's introduce what should we do then? What should we do again? What we've added padding to this. Okay, now let's so body, so padding, let's give padding to the body 0 and set the margin to 0 as well, in order that we wouldn't have any space. Alright, so now there is no space here nor there. Okay, alright, okay, that's just pretty much okay. Alright, so hi, welcome to my page. I think it's looking a bit okay for now. Alright, so now let's give padding to each grid element or grid item. So what we're going to do is we're going to locate the grid item. Alright, so the grid content here. Alright, so let's give it a padding of free view width and have a look at what happens. Alright, so now it's created padding for all of them. Alright, okay, alright, so I think now we're going somewhere. Alright, so let's again set our grid display to flex. So on our bigger screen, let's set the grid, let's set the display to flex. Alright, so now on a much bigger screen, we're going to have a grid set to flex. Okay, so that is the outcome of it. Alright, so it's going to be like this. Okay, Okay, so let's set the background colors. The background colors, let's change their units. I think that their units are the problem. To white, there are spaces here, so let's change their units. So for the background, gray and okay. So let's the left side back width. Okay, so let's do that. Let's do that right here. On larger screens, the width should be so margin right. Oh, we've set it to 1 rem. Let's set the height. Okay, let's set the height to 100 view height, equal height, and see what happens here. Okay, so all right, so we're good to go with this. So let's change that of this. Let's okay. So with the main, or let's create a space between each grid item. All right, so that's basically what we're going to do. We're going to create the grid contents. We're going to create a margin left. We're going to create a margin between each content. So 2 rem. Is it margin right or margin left? Well, let's experiment. All right. Doesn't look all that nice, but good. I think it's pretty much okay. Okay. So let's change the border radius to have a curly border on each element. The border radius of 10 pixels, and then let's have a look at what happens. Okay, so it changes it. All right, so what says the time? 1:41 a.m. Wow. And we've done 2 hours 22 minutes. Wow. This is going to take a lot of time. All right, so so what do we do next? Let me refer to the main page. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's create, I think the margin for the grid content is too much. So margin, let's have 0.5 rem and have a look at what happens. Okay, I think that is okay. Yeah, it's quite cool. Okay, all right. But let's set the contents here. Let's shift them to the middle. All right. So Where is it? Where is it? Nah. Okay, the left side. Alright, so here we're going to type justify content and give it a value center and align line self center. Let's have a look at what happens. Nothing happens? Really? Okay, so let's change. If nothing happens, let's change it. So align contents. Let's have a look whether it changes or not. So now our contents are aligned in the middle. But when we reduce the width of the page, it doesn't have effect, or it doesn't take effect here. So let's go ahead and change that. So left slide. All right, so let's give it center and fix the line center as well. All right, so let's have a look what happens here. So nothing happens, and I don't know why. But we're dealing with. Okay, we are in the larger screen section. Oh God! So this media query is for larger screens. Meanwhile, we're working in a smaller screen here. All right, so let's copy and paste this inside of the smaller screen section of our media query. So let's introduce the left slide class here. All right, so I think this should work. All right, so now we have a contents section at the middle of the page. All right, so we have a content section at the middle of the page. All right, okay. So that's pretty much it. All right, so what else haven't we done? What else haven't we done? So we have a header here. All right, so with an image, right? Okay. So let's introduce where am I? All right, so let's create a header here. So create header, a header tag, and create some anchor tags. Let's say free anchor tags. All right, so home, about, contact us. Alright, so let's go ahead and just make a reflect in the CSS file. So we're going to do that here. So dot header, we're going to give it a background of gray, color gray, and we're going to set our pattern to one view width. We're going to, okay, let's have a look at what happens on the page. Okay, we've created a header here with these links. So when we click here, it takes you home. When you click here, it takes you to the about page. When you click here, it takes you to the contact page. Alright, so let's continue. Sorry guys, I had to do this. So we have set our header. Now let's go ahead and add more beauty to these texts here. So our border color. So our border color should have a color of white. Yes, and we want the text decoration to be none. All right. Also, let's set the display to flags. Display to flags, and let's see what happens. Okay, I forgot something, dude. No. So, sorry guys. When you're tired, you tend to forget lots of things, alright? So, header. So that is how to link. That is how to link the anchor tag inside of a header class, alright, to your CSS. So first of all, the anchor tag A is found inside of the header class, and when we go right into this HTML page, we can clearly see that here these anchor tags are located inside of a div tag with a class of header, alright. So that's how we represent it here. So let's give it a color white and text decoration none, and let's have a look at what happens on the page. Alright, so now we have text white and I think we're good to go. So let's margin. Let's create a margin left. Let's create a margin between the text. All right. Okay, so we're gonna do this. We're gonna do margin left 1 rem. Let's have a look what happens. Okay. So now we have this. All right. So we're going somewhere. I think so. Now, let's give a text some background color. So background, let's change this color to another. Okay. So let's give it an RGB 414141, and let's have a look at what happens. Okay, let's give it a padding of 0.3 pixels and have a look at what happens. Nothing happens. Okay, let's give it REM as its unit. All right. So it gives it a little space. Alright, so we're good to go. And I will set the background color of the anchor tags here. Alright, so I think we're pretty much cool. So you can just apply all that we've learned in this very tutorial. You can apply them and just add more functionalities to your page. Guys, I think that I will end my tutorial for today. Don't forget to subscribe. Just imagine how all of you guys are far asleep and I'm the only guy here doing all these stuff just to make sure that you guys understand what I'm doing properly. So don't forget to smash the subscribe button below. Alright, and also if you have any question, just try as much as possible to put your questions below the comment section. Alright, just put your comments, alright, at the comment section. Alright, because when you don't do that, we don't really see how to improve. Alright, so when you comment, when there's a problem somewhere, when we said something we shouldn't have said, then when you put your comments there, would be able to know that, okay, this and that need to be changed. That stuff we didn't really say it right, and so there's the need for us to change the whole thing. All right, and so when you put your comments there, it helps us a lot. All right, okay, so guys, thank you very much, and I'm going to bed. I need to sleep.